welcome back, listener. Tonight, we're drifting slowly through a thought experiment that becomes more terrifying the deeper we explore it. What would actually happen if you found yourself in the world of Five Nights at Freddy's? Not as a player with restart buttons and save files, but as a real person, with real fear, real exhaustion, and real consequences for every mistake. From the humid confines of a security office where animatronics hunt you through the night, to the crushing darkness of a spring-lock suit that could fail at any moment, to the underground facilities where technology and death have merged into something that defies natural law. We'll explore every reason why your survival in this universe would be measured not in weeks or days, but in hours if you're lucky. This is not a tale of heroism or triumph, but a meditation on vulnerability, on the fragility of human consciousness when faced with machines that should not move but do, with corporate negligence that values profit over human life, with supernatural forces that trap souls in metal and wire, and with an environment so hostile to human survival that even the most careful, the most prepared, the most determined person would eventually fall victim to exhaustion, mechanical failure, or the simple mathematics of probability stacked impossibly against them. Whether you're uncovering these dangers for the first time, letting familiar horrors pull you deeper into rest, or simply allowing the exploration to wash over you like a gentle fog as sleep takes hold, this will carry you through a complete examination of why the FNAF universe is perhaps the most comprehensively lethal environment in horror gaming. A place where every roll, every shift, every moment contains multiple paths to death, and where survival is less about skill and more about blind luck that inevitably runs out. Before we begin, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy this kind of slow, immersive exploration that unfolds like a dark dream. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always a quiet wonder to see the same cautionary tale weaving through different corners of the world, one hushed night at a time. Let's begin this examination of why you, yes, you specifically, would not survive even a single day in the world of Five Nights at Freddy's. Part 1. The Night Guard, your first and final shift. Let us begin with the most iconic role in the FNAF universe, the one that seems simplest from the outside, the night security guard. You've seen the job posting, perhaps pinned to a bulletin board at a community center, or scrolling past on an employment website. Night security guard wanted for local pizzeria. Monitoring and light maintenance. $120 per week. Inquire within. The pay is terrible. Barely enough to cover rent in even the cheapest apartment. But you need the work. Need something to fill the gaps in your resume. Need to prove you can hold down employment after whatever difficulties brought you to this point in your life. The interview, if you can call it that, is perfunctory. A tired manager barely looks at your application, asks if you can work nights, mentions something about watching cameras and making sure nothing is stolen. There's no background check, no drug test, no references called, because Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is always hiring security guards, always fill in positions that open up with suspicious frequency. The company uses temp agencies now, cycling through employees so quickly that individual names blur together, each guard lasting anywhere from one night to a full week before quitting, disappearing, or, in rare cases, being found dead in circumstances the company's lawyers work very hard to classify as trespassing accidents rather than workplace fatalities. You arrive for your first shift at 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes early because you want to make a good impression, want to prove you're reliable. The building is already dark, the day staff long gone, the parking lot empty except for a few cars that look like they haven't moved in months. The front doors are locked, but there's a side entrance for employees, and your new keycard grants access with a beep that sounds too loud in the silence. Inside, the pizzeria has a different quality at night, the cheerful decorations taking on sinister shadows, the arcade machines dark and silent. The stage where the animatronic band performs empty, save for the three figures standing motionless, waiting for morning. You make your way to the security office, a small room barely large enough for a desk, a chair, and the bank of monitors showing camera feeds from throughout the building. There's supposed to be a night guard training you, showing you the ropes, but they didn't show up, called in sick or simply quit without notice, so you're alone, learning the job through a training video on a tape so old it tracking lines distort the picture. The man on the tape, speaking with the forced cheerfulness of corporate training materials, welcomes you to your first night at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He mentions that the animatronics move at night, something about their servos locking up if they don't, and that if they see you, they might try to put you inside a spare animatronic suit, which would be fatal due to all the metal and wires inside. This information is delivered casually, as if it's a minor inconvenience rather than a death threat, and you laugh nervously because surely this is some kind of hazing, some joke played on new employees to see if they scare easily. But then 12 hours a.m. arrives, and the cameras show the animatronics beginning to move, their heads turning with mechanical precision, their bodies shifting from standing positions to walking stances, and you realize with cold clarity that the training video was not exaggerating, not joking, that you are locked in a building with machines that hunt humans, and your shift has only just begun. Let us examine why you would not survive this shift, breaking down each threat systematically, exploring not just the obvious dangers but the subtle, cumulative factors that would overwhelm even the most careful person. The immediate problem: the animatronics. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy are not ordinary animatronics. Even setting aside the supernatural elements, the possession by murdered children's spirits, the remnant-fueled consciousness that drives them, these are machines that should not be capable of what they do. They navigate through the building with apparent purpose, avoiding camera sight lines when convenient, choosing paths that maximize their chances of reaching the security office undetected. They move through darkness without navigation systems, climb through ventilation shafts despite weighing several hundred pounds each, and demonstrate problem-solving abilities that no programming from the 1980s or 90s could possibly account for. Bonnie, the blue rabbit, is typically the first to move, leaving the stage within minutes of midnight, disappearing from camera view and reappearing in various rooms, getting progressively closer to your office. His path is unpredictable, sometimes taking direct routes, other times circling through distant rooms before approaching from unexpected angles. You must track him through cameras, but here's your first impossible choice. Looking at cameras requires taking your eyes off the doorways. The office has two open doorways, left and right, with no actual doors, only heavy metal barriers that can be lowered using buttons on your desk. These doors consume power from a limited battery that must last until 6 a.m. And if you run out of power before then, the doors open automatically, the lights shut off, and Freddy plays a music box tune before attacking. So you're watching cameras, trying to track Bonnie's location, when movement in your peripheral vision makes you glance at the left doorway. Nothing there. But was that just darkness, or is something standing just outside your vision? You check the light, another button that consumes power, and see nothing. But while you were checking the left door, Bonnie could have approached the right door, so you check that light too. Still nothing. You return to the cameras to reacquire Bonnie's position, but he's not where you last saw him. He's moved again, and now you've lost track of him entirely. The cycle repeats, checking cameras, checking doors, managing power consumption, trying to track multiple animatronics simultaneously, and you're already feeling the first creeping edges of panic. This is within the first hour. You have 5 more hours until 6 a.m. Chica, the yellow chicken, moves independently of Bonnie, taking her own path toward your office, often approaching from the right side. She carries a cupcake with disturbingly realistic eyes, and when she's at your door, she stares through the window with a gaze that no animatronic should possess, her jaw hanging open, the programming or possession animating her, creating an expression of hunger that makes your skin crawl. Foxy, the pirate fox, behaves differently from the others, hiding in Pirate Cove behind a curtain that you must periodically check via camera. If you don't look at Pirate Cove frequently enough, Foxy becomes active, sprinting down the hallway toward your office at speeds that should be mechanically impossible for an animatronic his size. And Freddy, the titular bear, moves slowly, methodically, laughing occasionally, his laughter echoing through the building's audio system, letting you know he's active, he's coming, he's inevitable. If your power reaches 0, Freddy's music box plays, and he appears in your doorway, his eyes glowing in the darkness, and there's nothing you can do. No way to close doors without power. No escape route from an office with only 2 exits, both blocked by a half-ton animatronic bear possessed by a murdered child who sees you as their killer. The impossible mathematics of power management. Let's discuss the power system, because this alone makes survival nearly impossible, even before considering the animatronics themselves. You have a limited battery that drains continuously, faster when you use cameras, faster still when you activate door lights, and dramatically faster when you close the security doors. The percentage visible on your monitor ticks down steadily. 99, 98, 97. Each number representing roughly 84 seconds of operational time if you're using minimal power. Less if you're actually trying to survive. To successfully monitor the animatronics, you need to check cameras frequently, perhaps every 15-20 seconds, each camera check consuming power. That's already a significant drain. But you also need to check door lights, because animatronics can be standing just outside your office, and checking lights is the only way to know if they're there before they enter and kill you. Door lights must be checked frequently, perhaps every 10-15 seconds, each check consuming additional power. And sometimes, often, you need to close doors when an animatronic is approaching, and those doors drain power rapidly, eating through your battery in minutes if kept closed continuously. The mathematics simply don't work in your favor. If you check cameras and lights frequently enough to actually track the animatronics, you'll run out of power by 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. at the latest. If you conserve power by checking less frequently, you'll miss animatronics approaching, fail to close doors in time, and be killed by 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. There is a narrow band of optimal play that might, if executed perfectly for 6 hours straight, allow you to reach 6 a.m. with a tiny percentage of power remaining. But you're not a programmed AI. You're a human being experiencing real fear, real exhaustion, real adrenaline crashes, and the probability of executing perfect play for 6 consecutive hours on your first night, with no training approaches 0. Even if you somehow survive the first night through exceptional luck and caffeine-fueled paranoia, you must return for a second night, then a third, a fourth, a fifth, each night increasing in difficulty, the animatronics becoming more aggressive, moving faster, approaching more frequently. The pay period is weekly, meaning you must survive 5 nights consecutively to receive your 120 paycheck. Missing even one night means starting over, and quitting means you've wasted time and received no compensation. The job traps you through sunk cost fallacy and financial desperation, keeping you coming back even as every instinct screams to run. The physical toll. What 6 hours of terror does to your body beyond the mechanical threats, there's the physiological impact of sustained terror that would incapacitate you long before the animatronics reached your door. Your first adrenaline spike occurs within minutes of midnight, when Bonnie first moves, when you realize the danger is real. Your heart rate increases dramatically, blood pressure rises, cortisol floods your system, preparing your body for fight or flight. But you can neither fight animatronics weighing hundreds of pounds with endoskeletons designed to perform on stage for hours, nor flee from an office with only 2 exits, both of which they're approaching. The adrenaline sustains you initially, sharpening your focus, speeding your reaction time, keeping you alert as you juggle cameras and door lights and power management. But adrenaline is not infinite, cannot be sustained for hours without consequences. After the first hour, perhaps 90 minutes, you experience an adrenaline crash. Your body exhausted from the sustained high-alert state, your hands beginning to shake, your thoughts becoming scattered. You're tired now, but not sleepy tired, exhausted tired, wrung out tired, your body having burned through energy reserves at an unsustainable rate. By hour 3, around 3 a.m., you're experiencing mild cognitive impairment from sustained stress and fatigue. Your reaction time has slowed. You're making small mistakes, checking the wrong camera, forgetting to check a door light, losing track of which animatronic is where. These small errors compound, creating situations where you close doors unnecessarily, wasting power, or fail to close doors when needed, allowing animatronics closer access to your office. Your hands tremble when reaching for buttons. Your eyes struggle to focus on monitors that seem to blur and swim, and the beginning of a stress headache pulses behind your temples. Hour 4 a.m., brings a kind of exhausted delirium. You've been sitting in near darkness for 4 hours, staring at low-resolution camera feeds, jumping at every sound. Your nervous system fried from constant activation with no release. You start seeing movement that isn't there, shadows resolving into animatronic shapes that vanish when you activate door lights. You hear phantom footsteps, music that might be Freddy's laugh, or might be your imagination, voices that could be the animatronics' recorded lines, or could be auditory hallucinations brought on by exhaustion and fear. You cannot trust your senses, cannot be certain what's real and what's stress-induced delusion, yet you must continue making life-or-death decisions based on these unreliable perceptions. By hour 5 a.m., you're barely functional. Your power is critically low, probably below $10, meaning you have minutes of operational time remaining. The animatronics have been active for 5 hours, their AI or supernatural intelligence having mapped your patterns, learned your habits, adapted their approach strategies. They're all close now, Bonnie at the left door, Chica at the right, Foxy ready to sprint if you stop checking Pirate Cove, Freddy somewhere in the building laughing his mechanical laugh. You're exhausted beyond anything you've experienced before, running on fumes and fear, your body screaming for rest while your mind knows that rest means death. And this is assuming perfect health, no pre-existing conditions, optimal circumstances. If you have anxiety, this environment would trigger panic attacks that would make rational decision-making impossible. If you have ADHD, maintaining focus on repetitive monitoring tasks for 6 hours would be torture, your attention slipping at critical moments. If you have any heart conditions, the sustained stress could trigger cardiac events, medical emergencies with no one to help, no way to call for assistance, alone in a building with machines hunting you. If you are on medication that affects alertness or reaction time, you are at additional disadvantage against threats that require split-second responses. The sensory nightmare, isolation and darkness. The security office itself is a torture chamber designed by accident, a confluence of poor planning and budget constraints that creates an environment hostile to human psychology. The room is small, perhaps 8 feet by 10 feet, with no windows to the outside world, no natural light, no sense of space beyond the walls pressing in around you. The only illumination comes from the monitor displaying camera feeds and the occasional use of door lights, meaning you spend 6 hours in near total darkness, your eyes straining to see details on low-quality screens, your pupils fully dilated, making any sudden light painfully bright. The sounds are worse than the darkness. The building settles and creaks, old construction making noises that could be structural or could be animatronics moving through rooms. The camera audio picks up ambient sound, letting you hear footsteps, breathing, the mechanical whir of servos, but the audio quality is so poor you cannot accurately pinpoint locations or distances. Freddy's laugh echoes through the building, stereo separation making it impossible to tell if he's near or far, his signature sound becoming a form of psychological warfare that keeps you constantly on edge. The ventilation system hums continuously, creating white noise that masks other sounds, making you uncertain if that scraping noise was Bonnie in the hallway or just air moving through ducts. Touch provides no comfort. The office is maintained poorly, surfaces sticky from spilled soda or covered in dust from inadequate cleaning, the chair uncomfortable after the first hour. Your body developing pressure points and cramps from sitting frozen in fear, afraid to move, to stretch, to do anything that might generate sound or distract from monitoring. The temperature fluctuates, sometimes too cold as night deepens, and the building's heating system fails to compensate. Sometimes too warm when your stress response raises your body temperature. Sweat beading on your forehead. And you remember the training video's warning about the spring lock suits, about moisture-triggering mechanisms. And you wonder if any of those suits are in the building, if the failure mode applies only to the suits or to other animatronics as well. Isolation compounds everything. You are utterly alone, no co-workers to share the experience, no supervisor to call for guidance, no one to validate that what you're experiencing is real, and not some elaborate hallucination or nightmare. If something goes wrong, if an animatronic reaches you, if you make a fatal mistake, no one will know for hours. Your body not discovered until the morning staff arrives and finds you stuffed into a Freddy Fazbear suit. Your endoskeleton now actual skeleton. Your screams having echoed through an empty building with no one to hear, no one to help, no one to even mourn until your absence is noted days later when you fail to show up for subsequent shifts. The legal and ethical nightmare, corporate negligence. Step back from the immediate dangers and consider the broader context of your employment at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Because the job itself is a monument to corporate negligence and legal liability that would shut down any real establishment within hours of discovery. You are being asked to work alone at night in a building with known dangerous equipment that moves autonomously. There are no safety protocols, no emergency procedures, no backup systems, no panic buttons, no direct line to emergency services. The phone in your office connects only to other extensions in the building, useless when you're the only person present, and your cell phone, if you have one in the 1990s setting of most games, has no signal in the metal-reinforced building. The animatronics themselves violate numerous safety regulations. They move without supervision, operate in modes not described in their documentation, exhibit behaviors that suggest either severe malfunction or illegal AI implementation. They weigh hundreds of pounds and move at speeds that could easily kill someone through blunt force trauma alone. Never mind the stated threat of being stuffed into a suit. OSHA would have a field day with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, citations for inadequate lighting, missing safety equipment, hazardous working conditions, failure to provide adequate training, and most damningly, knowingly placing employees in life-threatening situations without proper protective measures. But Fazbear Entertainment, the parent company, shields itself through legal machinations, using temp agencies to hire security guards, classifying you as an independent contractor rather than an employee, avoiding liability through carefully worded waivers and arbitration clauses buried in documents you signed without reading because you needed the work. When you die, and statistically you will die, the company will express regret, settle with your family for an undisclosed sum contingent on signing NDAs, and continue operating, hiring your replacement before your body is cold, perpetuating a cycle of exploitation that treats human life as an acceptable business expense. The training you receive is deliberately insufficient, designed to satisfy legal minimums without actually preparing you for the reality of the job. The training video mentions the animatronics move at night but frames it as quirky rather than lethal, downplays the danger, uses euphemistic language about being mistaken for an endoskeleton without a costume, rather than clearly stating you will be killed by robots. This is intentional, because accurate training would result in no one accepting the position, so the company lies by omission, lets new guards discover the danger firsthand, and gambles that some percentage will be lucky or skilled enough to survive the week, fulfilling the company's need for security presence while maintaining deniability about the true nature of the hazards. The supernatural element. Fighting ghosts with flashlights. Now add the supernatural layer that makes survival truly impossible. The animatronics are not simply malfunctioning machines, but are possessed by the souls of murdered children, killed by William Afton in the Spring Bonnie suit. Their bodies stuffed into the animatronic shells, where their remnant bound their consciousness to the metal and circuits. This means you're not defending against predictable programming, but against intelligent, angry spirits who remember their deaths, who see you as either their killer or someone associated with their killer, and who have had years or decades to learn the building's layout, to understand how to hunt humans efficiently. Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, Jeremy, and Cassidy, the children possessing Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy respectively, are driven by rage and confusion, trapped in metal bodies, unable to move on to whatever comes after death, their childhoods stolen, their families lost, their existence reduced to an eternal night shift in a pizzeria that became their tomb. They strike at anyone wearing the security guard uniform, not because they understand you're innocent, but because you represent the system that killed them, the adults who failed to protect them, the company that covered up their murders and continued operating as if nothing had happened. You cannot reason with them, cannot explain that you're not William Afton, that you're just someone who needed a job, that you have nothing to do with their deaths, their children, traumatized and dead, operating on emotional logic that says adult in uniform equals danger, equals threat to be neutralized. Their possession of the animatronics gives them capabilities beyond mechanical. They can move without power, appear in locations without using doors, manifest as hallucinations or actual apparitions, and in the case of Golden Freddy, simply appear in your office without any physical approach, a spectral animatronic that crashes reality itself when you look at him too long. This supernatural element means that perfect play is not enough, that understanding the mechanics and optimizing your strategy will not guarantee survival, because the rules change based on emotional states you cannot predict, because spirits can cheat physics, because your flashlight and door buttons are physical tools being used to fight metaphysical threats. You're in a gunfight with a knife. No, worse. You're in a reality fight with building security, trying to keep out entities that don't fully exist in the same dimension you do, that can bend the rules because they're already dead and have nothing left to lose. The scenario spiral. One shift becomes many. Assume, through miraculous luck and perhaps guardian angels working overtime, you survive your first night at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. 6 a.m. arrives, the animatronics return to their starting positions, and you're permitted to leave. Stumbling out of the building on shaking legs, your shirt soaked with sweat, your mind reeling from 6 hours of sustained terror. You drive home as the sun rises, shower to wash off the pizza grease and fear, collapse into bed, and sleep the dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted, waking around 2 p.m. to discover you must return for another shift in less than 10 hours. The second night is worse than the first, always, because now you know what's coming. Now you understand the danger. Now, anticipatory anxiety begins hours before your shift. Your body flooding with stress hormones while you're still home, still safe, preparing for trauma before it occurs. You arrive at work already partially exhausted from worry. Your stress reserves depleted before midnight even arrives. And when the animatronics begin moving, the fear is not fresh terror but the renewal of yesterday's fear. Wounds reopened. Psychological damage compounded. Each subsequent night increases in difficulty. The animatronics programmed to become more aggressive, to move faster, to give you less reaction time. By night 5, they're active almost immediately, giving you no grace period, no time to settle into the rhythm of the shift. Bonnie and Chica rush your office within the first hour. Foxy sprints at the slightest neglect of camera checks. Freddy laughs constantly, closing in from every angle. And the power drain is so severe that even perfect play leaves you running on emergency lights by 5:30 a.m., praying you can survive 30 more minutes in total darkness, with Freddy standing in your doorway playing his music box lullaby before he kills you. The cumulative sleep deprivation alone would incapacitate you by week's end. Working midnight to 6 a.m. disrupts your circadian rhythm catastrophically, especially when combined with stress that prevents proper rest during daylight hours. By Thursday or Friday, you're experiencing micro-sleeps, brief moments of unconsciousness lasting seconds, during which animatronics can approach undetected. Your judgment is impaired, risk assessment skewed, reaction time delayed, fine motor control degraded. You're operating heavy machinery, the security door buttons and camera controls, while in a state of cognitive function equivalent to being legally drunk, and one mistake, one moment of inattention, one wrong button pressed or right button not pressed, ends your life. And this is just the first week, just the first location. The FNAF universe spans multiple establishments, multiple time periods, each with their own unique threats, their own impossible survival requirements, their own reasons why you would not last a day, let alone a career in this industry. Reflect and drift. Through sigh, impossibility made clear. As we pause in our exploration, let the weight of these compounding factors settle over you like a heavy blanket. The night guard position at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is not merely dangerous but comprehensively lethal, designed through a combination of corporate negligence, supernatural malevolence, and simple physics to ensure that survival is a statistical anomaly rather than an expected outcome. You would not survive your first shift, not really. Not without luck so profound it qualifies as divine intervention. And even if you somehow survived one night, the cumulative damage to your body and psyche would make surviving 5 consecutive nights impossible. This is just one role, one position, one slice of the FNAF universe. There are others, each with their own unique ways to kill you, each demanding we explore why you, specifically you, would not survive them. But for now, let yourself drift. Let the impossibility of the night guard position wash over you. Let your mind process the multiple simultaneous threats that would need to be managed perfectly for hours without error, while exhausted and terrified, and running on depleting battery power both literal and physiological. Sleep comes easier when you're not in that office, when you're safe in your own bed, when the worst thing that might wake you is an alarm clock rather than a possessed animatronic. Rest now, knowing that the exploration continues, that we have barely scratched the surface of why the FNAF universe would kill you in countless ways. But for now, be grateful you're here, listening, and not there, living it, not experiencing the reality of what it would actually mean to work even one shift in that building, in that role, in that nightmare made reality through the convergence of bad business practices and supernatural tragedy. Let sleep take you gently, knowing that we'll return to this examination, that there are more locations to explore, more roles to analyze, more reasons to document why you wouldn't last a day. But those can wait. For now, rest. Be still, and be profoundly grateful you don't actually need the 120 a week badly enough to find out if you'd be one of the statistical anomalies who survive, or one of the expected casualties that Fazbear Entertainment's budget already accounts for. Part 2. The Daytime Employee. Hidden Dangers in Broad Daylight. Welcome back to our exploration of why you wouldn't survive in the FNAF universe. As sleep continues to pull at the edges of consciousness, let us turn our attention from the night shift to what seems like a safer alternative. Working at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza during the day. Surely, you think, surely when the sun is shining and children are laughing and the animatronics are performing their programmed routines on stage. This would be a survivable position, a job you could maintain without constant mortal terror. This assumption, comforting as it is completely wrong, and we'll explore precisely why as we drift through the hidden dangers of daytime employment at establishments where remnant soaks the walls and corporate negligence creates death traps disguised as family entertainment. The day shift. Different dangers, same outcomes. You've applied for a position as a day shift employee at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, perhaps as a cook, a server, a janitor, a technician, or a birthday party host. The interview process is slightly more rigorous than the night guard position, requiring you to demonstrate basic customer service skills. To pass a background check that's primarily looking for records that might create liability, rather than actually ensuring you're qualified. And to sit through training videos that teach you how to operate the cash register, how to serve pizza, how to smile at customers even when they're rude, and how to perform basic maintenance on arcade machines that constantly break down due to age and overuse. The training mentions the animatronics only in passing, noting that they perform on a schedule, that you should not interfere with their performances, that they're expensive equipment that must be treated with care, and that under no circumstances should anyone who is not a certified technician attempt to repair or modify them. There's a brief, uncomfortable mention that the animatronics have historically had some issues, and that employees should exercise caution around them. But the phrasing is so vague and bureaucratic that you have no real understanding of what this means, what form these issues take, or why caution is necessary around machines that are theoretically bolted to a stage and programmed to sing children's songs. Your first day shift begins at 8 a.m., 2 hours before the restaurant opens to customers, giving you time to help with setup, to clean tables and check that the arcade machines are functional, to ensure the dining area is presentable. The building has a different quality during the day, sunlight streaming through windows making everything seem less ominous. The colorful decorations cheerful rather than sinister. The animatronics on stage simply large robots waiting to be activated rather than the predatory presences they become at night. Then 10 a.m. arrives, and the animatronics power on for their first performance. You're wiping down tables near the stage when you hear the mechanical whir of servos activating, the soft click of systems coming online, and you glance up to see Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica beginning their programmed routine. Freddy's jaw opens and closes in time with his recorded vocals. Bonnie's arms move to simulate playing his guitar. Chica sways in rhythm while her beak chatters, and it's all perfectly normal. Exactly what you'd expect from animatronic performers in a 1990s pizza restaurant. But then Freddy's head turns slightly, off program, his eyes seeming to focus on you specifically, tracking your movement as you continue wiping tables. This is impossible. This is not part of the show. Animatronics from this era don't have the vision processing to track individuals, yet his gaze follows you, and for just a moment, you see something in those mechanical eyes that seems aware, seems angry, seems to remember things that happened in this building long before you were hired. This is your first indication that daytime shift is not as safe as you assumed, that the animatronics' behavior is not limited to their nighttime hunting patterns, that remnant-fueled possession operates continuously, merely suppressed during the day by programming and the presence of crowds, but never truly absent, never truly inactive. You are being watched, assessed, remembered, and the animatronics are slowly, patiently, determining whether you represent a threat or an opportunity. The physical dangers. Machines not meant for proximity. Let's examine the basic mechanical dangers of working in close proximity to animatronics, setting aside supernatural possession for the moment and focusing purely on the physics of large robotic systems operating in spaces designed for human occupation. Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica each weigh approximately 300–400 pounds. Their endoskeletons constructed from metal alloys designed to support this weight while providing the structural integrity necessary for sustained performance. Their moving parts, arms, legs, jaws, all contain motors powerful enough to move these masses repeatedly throughout the day, which means they exert forces measured in hundreds of pounds of pressure. Now, consider that these animatronics perform on a stage roughly 3 feet off the ground, slightly elevated to ensure good visibility for children sitting at tables. There are no barriers between the stage and the dining area. No plexiglass shields or safety rails. Nothing preventing someone from approaching the animatronics during their performance, reaching out to touch them, or being struck by them if their movements malfunction. Children, naturally curious and excited by the large robotic animals, regularly approach the stage despite parents' warnings, trying to high-five Bonnie or hug Freddy, putting themselves within range of mechanical arms that could easily crush bone if they malfunctioned during contact. As an employee, you're expected to prevent children from approaching too closely, to gently redirect them back to their tables. But you're simultaneously expected to ensure the dining area is clean, that orders are taken and delivered, that the salad bar is stocked, that arcade tokens are dispensed, that birthday cakes are delivered with appropriate ceremony. You cannot watch the stage continuously, cannot prevent every child from approaching, and so inevitably, repeatedly, you find yourself rushing over to pull a toddler back from Freddy's moving arm, placing yourself between a child and several hundred pounds of moving metal, hoping that the animatronics programming accounts for proximity sensors that will stop movement if they detect human presence. These sensors, you learn quickly, do not always work. Whether due to age, damage, poor maintenance, or supernatural interference, the animatronics sometimes continue moving even when someone is within their range, arms swinging through space where a child stood moments before, jaws snapping closed near where a parent leaned in for a photo. The near misses are frequent enough that veteran employees barely react, having developed a sixth sense for when to pull people back, when to shout warnings. But you're new, your timing not yet calibrated, and it's only a matter of time before your timing is wrong, before you fail to pull a child back quickly enough, before you witness or directly experience what happens when metal and flesh collide with industrial force. The bite risk. History repeating. The FNAF lore documents at least two major incidents referred to as bites, where animatronics' jaws closed on human heads, crushing skulls, causing catastrophic brain trauma. The bite of '83, where the crying child was killed by Fredbear during his birthday party, and the bite of '87, where an unnamed victim was attacked by an animatronic during daytime hours, resulting in the loss of their frontal lobe but somehow surviving. These are the documented incidents, the ones severe enough to make it into company records and urban legends. But they represent only the visible tip of a much larger problem. Animatronic jaws are powerful enough to crush bone and have repeatedly demonstrated willingness to bite humans given opportunity. The animatronics' jaws are designed to open and close for expression during performances, simulating speech or singing, giving them character and personality. Freddy's jaw drops when he hits high notes. Chica's beak chatters rhythmically. Bonnie's mouth opens in what's meant to be a smile but looks more like a threat display. The motors controlling these movements are powerful, necessarily so given the weight of the mechanical jaw components, calibrated to move quickly enough to match music tempo but without regard for what happens if something gets caught between the closing jaws. Human heads, it turns out, fit perfectly in the space created by an animatronic's open mouth. Children, curious about how the robots work, sometimes try to look inside Freddy's mouth during performances, standing on tiptoes to peer into the mechanical darkness. Adults, taking photos or helping children get closer for pictures, lean in close to the animatronics, their heads entering the danger zone, within range of jaws programmed to close with hundreds of pounds of pressure. The programming should prevent jaws from closing when sensors detect obstruction. But, as we've established, these sensors are unreliable at best, absent at worst, and the possessed animatronics have demonstrated both the ability and willingness to override safety protocols when opportunity presents itself. As a daytime employee, you would witness multiple near-miss incidents. Children pulled back seconds before jaws snapped shut. Adults warned away from getting too close, and you would hear the stories from veteran employees about the time someone's hand got caught in Bonnie's mouth, about the child who lost part of their ear when Chica's beak clipped them, about the birthday party that ended with a frantic 911 call and a payout settlement that came with an NDA. You would understand, viscerally, that the bite incidents are not anomalies but inevitable outcomes of a fundamentally unsafe design operated in a high-traffic environment with minimal safety protocols and maintained by a company that values cost savings over human life. And you would know, with cold certainty, that it's only a matter of time before you're present when the next bite occurs, before you're the one pulling a screaming child from an animatronic's mouth, before you're the one covered in blood, traumatized, probably fired shortly after, for violating some nebulous policy about allowing guests too close to the animatronics, blamed for the company's negligence, left to deal with PTSD while Fazbear Entertainment's lawyers work to minimize their liability. The Springlock Threat. Death. Hiding in the back room. Now we must discuss the Springlock suits, because if you work daytime shift long enough, especially in older locations or during certain promotional periods, you will inevitably be asked to wear one. Spring Bonnie and Fredbear, the original animatronics from Fredbear's Family Diner, were designed with a dual functionality that seemed innovative in concept, but proved catastrophically dangerous in practice. They could operate as standard animatronics, performing on stage, or they could be converted into wearable suits, the animatronic components retracting via spring-loaded mechanisms to create a hollow space for a human performer to occupy. The training for spring-lock suit operation is cursory at best, usually consisting of a senior employee showing you how to wind the spring locks into their retracted position, how to climb inside the suit, how to carefully move without triggering the mechanisms, and a litany of warnings delivered with the casual tone of someone who has repeated them so many times they've lost their impact. Don't breathe too heavily. Don't move too quickly. Don't allow moisture to contact the spring locks. Don't wear the suit in humid environments. Don't sneeze. Don't sweat. Don't exist in any way that might cause the hundreds of spring-loaded mechanisms around your body to fail catastrophically and drive animatronic components through your torso. The failure mode of a spring-lock suit is so horrific that it demands detailed examination. When fully retracted, the spring locks hold back metal crossbeams, artificial ribs, wiring, gears, animatronic head components, arm and leg mechanisms, essentially the entire internal structure of an animatronic that normally occupies the space you're now standing in. These components weigh, collectively, hundreds of pounds and are held mere inches from your body by springs under tension. If the spring locks fail, all of this mass is released simultaneously, snapping closed with tremendous force, the metal components driving into and through your body from every angle. The injuries this causes are extensive and universally fatal. The artificial ribs puncture your chest cavity, piercing lungs and heart. The head mechanisms crush your skull from inside, metal plates pressing against your cranium with enough force to fracture bone. The arm and leg components break your limbs, dislocating joints, severing tendons. The wiring wraps around organs, the gears tear through tissue, and all of this happens in less than a second. The spring lock failure occurring too quickly for your nervous system to fully register what's happening, before catastrophic damage renders you incapable of screaming, breathing, or doing anything except dying in excruciating agony. You don't die immediately, though. That's the truly horrific aspect. The spring lock failure causes massive trauma but doesn't instantly kill, instead leaving you impaled by dozens of metal components, bleeding internally, drowning in your own blood as it fills punctured lungs, conscious and aware for anywhere from seconds to minutes, experiencing pain beyond what human neurology is designed to process, unable to call for help because your vocal cords are crushed, unable to move because every motion drives the metal deeper, unable to do anything except endure until blood loss or asphyxiation or shock finally claims you. And this can be triggered by moisture, by a drop of sweat falling onto a spring lock, by breathing too hard in a humid environment, by the pizza restaurant's kitchen steam finding its way into the back room where you're suiting up. The company knows this, has known this since the first spring lock failure deaths, has documented the failure mode extensively in incident reports sealed by legal settlements, yet continues to use the suits because they're cost-effective, because entertainment value outweighs safety concerns, because replacing them would require capital expenditure that impacts quarterly profits. So instead, they just require new employees to sign waivers and releases that shield the company from liability when, not if, when you die screaming inside a spring Bonnie costume at a child's birthday party. The hidden threat. Remnant exposure. There's another danger specific to the FNAF universe that has no equivalent in reality. Prolonged exposure to remnant, the supernatural substance created when strong emotions, particularly fear and agony, imprint on physical materials at the moment of death. The animatronics contain remnant, injected deliberately by William Afton, or accumulated naturally from the murdered children stuffed inside them, and this remnant permeates the building, soaking into walls and floors, accumulating in areas where violence occurred, creating an environment saturated with the metaphysical residue of trauma and death. Working at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza means spending 40 or more hours per week in this environment, breathing air that passes through ventilation systems contaminated with remnant particles, touching surfaces where remnant has accumulated, serving food prepared in kitchens where the very walls remember the sounds of children dying. The effects of chronic remnant exposure are not well documented because the phenomenon is not recognized by mainstream science, but evidence throughout the FNAF lore suggests that prolonged exposure causes psychological degradation, hallucinations, temporal displacement, and eventual fusion of consciousness with the environment itself. Employees at Freddy Fazbear's locations report increasingly severe symptoms the longer they work there. Vivid nightmares featuring the animatronics, auditory hallucinations of children crying or screaming, visual distortions where the animatronics seem to move when they shouldn't, feelings of being watched, moments of lost time where they cannot account for minutes or hours of their shift. These symptoms are typically attributed to stress or overwork, and employees who report them too insistently are quietly let go. But the pattern is consistent across locations and decades, suggesting a genuine phenomenon rather than individual psychological breakdown. In extreme cases, remnant exposure seems to result in partial possession or consciousness merging, where individuals begin to think of themselves as part of the location, unable to leave even when off shift, returning to the building compulsively, eventually dying there through accident or apparent suicide, and then continuing to haunt the location alongside the murdered children and William Afton's various incarnations. The boundary between living employee and trapped spirit becomes porous with sufficient exposure, and you would not recognize the transition until it was complete, until you realized you couldn't remember your home address, couldn't recall your life outside the pizzeria, couldn't conceive of existence beyond these walls saturated with remnant and rage. The workload nightmare. Understaffed by design setting. Aside supernatural and mechanical dangers, there's a simple brutal reality that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is perpetually understaffed, running on skeleton crews that cannot possibly handle the workload safely, creating situations where employees are forced to choose between doing their jobs poorly or putting themselves in dangerous situations to meet expectations. The company hires minimum wage workers, offers no benefits, provides minimal training, and maintains impossibly high turnover rates, meaning that at any given time, most of the staff are new hires still learning basic procedures while being expected to perform like veterans. You would be assigned multiple roles simultaneously: taking orders, serving food, hosting birthday parties, cleaning tables, restocking the salad bar, maintaining arcade machines, mopping up spills, and monitoring the animatronics to ensure they don't malfunction during performances. This would need to be accomplished during peak hours when the restaurant is filled to capacity. Hundreds of children running around unsupervised, parents distracted by conversation or their phones, spills and messes occurring constantly, arcade machines jamming and requiring attention, and the kitchen perpetually backed up with orders, meaning everything takes longer than it should. Complaints pile up, and you're moving at a near run for 6 or 8 hours straight, trying to keep up with impossible demands. This exhaustion and divided attention make accidents inevitable. You're carrying a tray of drinks when a child runs into you, hot coffee spilling onto a toddler, a lawsuit waiting to happen. You're restocking arcade tokens when an animatronic's arm swings during a performance, clipping your shoulder hard enough to leave a bruise and nearly knocking you into the stage. You're mopping up a soda spill when a parent complains that their order is wrong, and you have to abandon the spill to address the complaint, and another customer slips in the puddle you left, falls, cracks their head on a table edge, and now there's blood on the floor and a potential traumatic brain injury. And you're the one who will be blamed for not finishing the cleanup, even though you were pulled away by competing demands. The company's response to injuries is swift and predictable. Document that the employee failed to follow proper safety procedures. Terminate employment for negligence. Deny any liability. Settle if necessary, but always with an NDA attached. And hire a replacement who will go through the same cycle. There is no incentive to improve working conditions because employees are disposable, easily replaced, and the cost of occasional injury settlements is less than the cost of proper staffing levels or meaningful safety improvements. The cumulative weight. Why you'd quit or die. The daytime position at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza would not kill you as quickly or as dramatically as the night guard position, but it would kill you nonetheless, through accumulated stress, physical injury, remnant exposure, or eventually being present during a catastrophic incident like a spring lock failure or animatronic malfunction. If you somehow avoided fatal injury, you would quit within weeks, unable to tolerate the workload, the danger, the knowledge that you're working for a company that values your life less than the cost of proper safety equipment, that expects you to put yourself in harm's way for minimum wage, and threatens termination if you refuse. Every day would bring new near misses, new injuries, new trauma. You would witness children nearly being hurt, would see the animatronics behaving in ways that shouldn't be possible, would hear stories from veteran employees about co-workers who disappeared or died in accidents that were never properly investigated. You would develop anxiety that made it difficult to sleep, would have nightmares about spring lock failures or animatronic attacks, would find yourself unable to enjoy normal activities because some part of your mind was always back at the pizzeria, always watching for danger, always waiting for the next incident. The financial calculation would eventually force your hand. The wages are inadequate for the risk, the job offers no career advancement, and the psychological toll is unsustainable. You would give your 2 weeks' notice, or more likely simply stop showing up, abandoning the job like so many before you, and Fazbear Entertainment would shrug, delete your employee record, and post another job listing for your replacement. The cycle continuing unchanged, the company grinding through employees like the animatronics grind through their mechanical routines, neither showing any awareness that what they're doing is wrong, unsustainable, or monstrous in its casual disregard for human life. Drift into understanding. The day shift destroys differently. Let this section of our exploration settle over you like afternoon shadows in an empty restaurant. The understanding that danger does not only come at night, that the FNAF universe is hostile to human survival around the clock, that every position, every shift, every role carries unique threats that compound into impossible survival requirements. The day shift would wear you down gradually rather than killing you quickly, death by 1,000 cuts rather than one spring lock failure. But the destination is the same. You would not survive, would not maintain employment long term, would become another statistic in Fazbear Entertainment's employee turnover rate. Another person whose time at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza left them damaged, traumatized, and desperately grateful to have escaped with their life. Sleep now comes easier with the knowledge that you're not there. Not cleaning tables while possessed animatronics track your movements. Not wearing a spring-lock suit that could fail at any moment. Not breathing air saturated with remnant. Not trapped in a system designed to extract maximum labor while providing minimum protection. Rest in safety, knowing that we'll continue this exploration, that there are more locations, more roles, more threats to document, but for now, let yourself drift. Let the impossibility of daytime survival join with the impossibility of nighttime survival in a comprehensive understanding that the FNAF universe is simply, completely, comprehensively lethal to human life in all its forms. The tale continues, but your participation as a living person would end, quickly or slowly but inevitably, and it's better to experience this knowledge from the safety of your bed, listening, understanding, grateful for the fictional nature of these horrors, thankful that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza exists only in games and stories, and not on the corner of your street, not hiring, not waiting for you to need the work badly enough to ignore the warnings, to sign the waivers, to put on the uniform and walk through those doors into a world where you would not, could not survive. Rest now. More awaits, but rest first. Let sleep take you gently away from pizzerias and animatronics and spring-lock suits, away from remnant and corporate negligence and the 1,000 ways a family entertainment venue can become a death trap. Dream of safer places, quieter places, places where robots stay on their stages and children stay safe and companies care about the people they employ. Dream of anywhere else, because Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, even in dreams, even softened by sleep, remains a place no one should ever have to actually work. A place designed by negligence and haunted by tragedy to ensure that employment there is temporary, whether you quit or die, whether you escape or become part of the remnant saturating the walls. Sleep well, listener. The exploration continues, but you've earned rest from these particular horrors. Close your eyes, drift away, and know that understanding these dangers from a distance, safe in your own space, is infinitely preferable to learning them firsthand in a place where every shift could be your last, where every interaction with animatronics risks catastrophic injury, where even surviving means carrying trauma that never fully heals. Rest knowing you're fortunate to only hear about it, to only imagine it, to never actually have to live through even one day in the world of FNAF, because one day is more than enough to destroy you. Part 3. The Technician When You Must Touch the Machines. Continuing the deep exploration. As we continue our journey through why you wouldn't survive in the FNAF universe, let sleep deepen around you while we explore perhaps the most directly dangerous position of all. The animatronic technician, the person whose job requires not just proximity to these possessed machines, but direct physical contact, maintenance, repair, and understanding of systems that defy conventional engineering while containing the souls of murdered children. This role combines every danger we've explored thus far and adds new layers of risk specific to working inside the animatronics themselves, to understanding their construction, to discovering firsthand how Remnant integrates with circuitry, how possession manifests in mechanical behavior, and how touching dead children's bodies, because that's what you're doing when you repair these machines, affects the human psyche. The job that should not exist. The position of animatronic technician at Fazbear Entertainment is posted with requirements that seem straightforward. Mechanical engineering degree or equivalent experience, familiarity with robotic systems, ability to diagnose and repair electrical and mechanical failures, willingness to work irregular hours as breakdowns occur. The pay is better than security guard or daytime service positions, reflecting the specialized knowledge required, and the job offers something resembling normal employment rather than the temp agency nightmare of other positions. Suggesting this might be a survivable role might be a way to work in this universe without facing immediate mortal danger. This assumption crumbles during your first repair call, when you're summoned to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza after hours, because Bonnie has stopped functioning mid-performance, frozen on stage in a position that suggests mechanical seizure rather than simple power loss. You arrive with your toolkit, your training in robotics, your confidence in your ability to diagnose and fix machines, and you approach Bonnie's still form on the stage, unaware that you're about to discover that everything you know about engineering is inadequate for what you're facing. You begin with standard diagnostics, checking power connections, testing motor responses, looking for obvious failures in the control systems. Nothing appears wrong at the hardware level. Circuits show continuity. Power is reaching all systems, yet Bonnie remains frozen, his eyes dark, his systems unresponsive to your commands. You'll need to access his interior, to check the endoskeleton directly, to find the failure point that's preventing motion, and this requires opening the suit, exposing the machinery inside, physically climbing into the spaces between metal ribs and wiring to reach components that need inspection. As you unseal Bonnie's back panel and shine your flashlight inside, you're hit immediately by a smell that has nothing to do with machinery. An organic decay that shouldn't exist in a robot, shouldn't be possible in a system that contains no biological components. The smell is faint, old but unmistakable, and as your light plays across the interior of the animatronic, you see stains on metal that look disturbingly like dried blood, organic residue in seams and joints, and something that might be small bones lodged in the tangle of wiring near the chest cavity. You've just discovered that you're not repairing a machine but a tomb, that Bonnie contains the remains of Fritz, one of William Afton's murdered victims, that the missing children incident is not urban legend, but documented reality hidden inside the very animatronics you were employed to maintain. The police investigation failed to find the bodies because they never thought to look inside the animatronics, because William Afton had access to seal them back up, because Fazbear Entertainment never disclosed this possibility to authorities. And now you, a technician just trying to do your job, have become a witness to murder, a discoverer of remains, a person who knows too much. The ethical nightmare of maintaining murder weapons. Your training did not prepare you for this, for the moral implications of discovering that your job involves maintaining and repairing the very machines used to conceal murder victims, for the knowledge that every animatronic you work on potentially contains human remains, for the question of whether you should report this discovery, or whether doing so would result in your termination, legal threats, or simply becoming another person who knows too much and meets with an unfortunate accident. Fazbear Entertainment's legal position on this discovery, should you report it, would likely involve denial, claims that you planted evidence or are mentally unwell, reminders about the NDAs you signed that prohibit discussing company proprietary information, including internal animatronic construction, and implications that pursuing this matter would result in expensive litigation you cannot afford. The company has maintained plausible deniability about the murders for decades, has survived previous investigations, has machinery in place to discredit and silence anyone who threatens to expose the truth. So you face an impossible choice. Report what you found and face professional destruction, potential legal action, and the knowledge that nothing will likely change because the company is too adept at self-protection. Or say nothing, complete the repair, close Bonnie back up, and live with the knowledge that you're complicit in covering up murders, that you're maintaining machines that contain dead children, that your technical expertise is being used to enable a decades-long cover-up of the most heinous crimes imaginable. Most technicians who discover this truth choose the latter option, rationalize that the murders happened long ago, that reporting them now won't bring the children back, that they need the job, that someone will repair the animatronics whether or not they do, that complicity is preferable to unemployment and legal threats. But this choice corrodes the soul, makes every subsequent repair feel like desecrating graves, transforms the job from technical work into something darker, creates moral injury that manifests as insomnia, depression, substance abuse, or eventual complete psychological breakdown as the weight of keeping such secrets becomes unbearable. The technical impossibility. Systems that defy engineering. Beyond the moral dimension, there's the simple technical reality that the animatronics do not function according to any engineering principles you understand, that their behavior cannot be explained by their construction, that attempting to repair them forces you to confront the inadequacy of conventional science when faced with supernatural phenomena integrated into mechanical systems. Bonnie's control board, when you finally access it, shows burns and damage consistent with massive electrical surges. Yet the power systems show no faults, no source for the energy that scarred these circuits. The servos in his limbs show wear patterns suggesting millions of operations beyond their design specifications, movements made without power, forces exerted without corresponding motor activation. The endoskeleton shows stress fractures that should make motion impossible, metal fatigue that should have caused complete structural failure. Yet Bonnie continues to move, continues to perform, the remnant in his systems apparently substituting for mechanical integrity that no longer exists. You cannot repair this through normal means, cannot replace components that are held together by supernatural forces rather than physical bonds, cannot restore functionality that doesn't rely on functionality in any conventional sense. The animatronics work because they are possessed, because the spirits inside them will movement into reality regardless of mechanical state. And your role as technician becomes less about actual repair and more about maintaining the illusion that these are normal machines, about replacing obviously broken parts so that casual inspection doesn't reveal how impossible their continued operation is. Fazbear Entertainment knows this, documents it in technical manuals that read like grimoires, instructions for repairs that involve more ritual than engineering. When replacing servos in haunted animatronics, ensure remnant transfer is complete before sealing housing. Use silver solder for joints where spirits manifest. If animatronic exhibits signs of consciousness during repair, play music box to soothe spectral interference. These instructions are insane, pseudoscience mixed with occult practice, yet they work when conventional engineering fails, suggesting that the company has developed an entire field of ghost mechanical engineering that you are expected to master, despite it violating everything you learned in university. The physical danger. Working inside active haunted systems. The most immediate danger of animatronic technician work is that you must place yourself inside the machines, must climb into spaces designed for mechanical components, not human bodies, must work with your hands inches from mechanisms that could activate at any moment, severing fingers or crushing limbs or worse. Standard safety protocols demand that systems be completely powered down and locked out before maintenance, that there be no possibility of accidental activation, that the machine be rendered inert and safe. But the animatronics cannot be fully powered down, not really, because their animation comes not just from electricity, but from remnant, from the consciousness trapped in their circuits, and spirits don't have off switches, don't respect lockout-tagout procedures, don't care about OSHA regulations. You can disconnect power, can physically remove batteries and cut cables, and the animatronic can still move, can still activate, can still crush you inside its mechanical ribcage if the spirit inside decides you're a threat or simply doesn't want to be repaired. The company's solution to this problem is to have technicians work in pairs, one inside the animatronic performing repairs, one outside ready to pull their colleague out if the machine activates. But this often fails because the machines are heavy, because activation happens faster than humans can react, because by the time the outside technician realizes something's wrong, the inside technician is already trapped, already being crushed, already screaming as metal closes around them in a scenario horrifyingly similar to a spring lock failure but slower. The animatronic gradually constricting like a mechanical boa constrictor. The trapped technician fully aware of what's happening, pleading for help that cannot arrive quickly enough. You would witness this happen to a coworker, probably within your first month of employment, and you would understand that it could easily have been you. That random chance determined who went inside Chica that day. That next time it might be your turn to be crushed, your turn to scream for help that comes too late, your turn to become another employee whose death is classified as an industrial accident, another settlement with an NDA, another posting for a replacement technician who will learn these same lessons in the same painful ways. The degradation. Prolonged contact with remnant. The remnant exposure we discussed for daytime employees is exponentially worse for technicians because you're not just working in an environment with remnant contamination, but directly handling it, touching it, breathing it, getting it on your skin and clothes and in your hair, taking it home with you where it contaminates your living space, your family, your every moment of existence beyond the workplace. Remnant, when contacted directly, seems to transfer memories and emotions from the dead children to whoever touches it, creating a kind of psychic bleed-through where you experience fragments of their final moments, their fear, their pain, their confusion. You would be working on Freddy's endoskeleton, tightening a bolt or replacing a servo, and suddenly you're not you anymore. You're Gabriel. You're small and terrified, and a man in a spring Bonnie costume is telling you he has something special to show you. And you follow because you're a child, and adults are trustworthy. And you're in a back room, and something is wrong, and you try to scream, but then you're back, standing in front of Freddy with a wrench in your trembling hand, and you've just experienced a murder victim's final moments, have felt their terror as if it were your own, have been given a window into trauma so profound it transcended death and burned itself into metal and wire. This happens repeatedly, every repair session exposing you to new fragments, new memories, new ways to understand how these children died, and the cumulative effect is devastating. PTSD developing from traumas you didn't personally experience but nevertheless carry in your mind. Nightmares featuring memories that aren't yours. Intrusive thoughts about murders you weren't present for, but witnessed anyway through supernatural means. The company does not acknowledge this phenomenon, offers no mental health support, provides no counseling for technicians experiencing these symptoms. You are expected to simply cope, to continue working despite the psychological damage, to accept that this is part of the job, and if you can't handle it, if you start showing signs of breakdown, you're quietly let go, replaced with someone who hasn't yet accumulated enough remnant exposure to be symptomatic. The cycle continuing as the company burns through technicians' mental health, the way it burns through their physical safety. the ultimate impossibility, repairing what shouldn't work. The fundamental impossibility of the animatronic technician role is that you're being asked to repair machines that function through supernatural means using conventional tools and knowledge, to maintain systems that defy physics using engineering principles, to keep animatronics operational when their operation depends on factors you cannot measure, cannot understand, and cannot control. Bonnie's left arm doesn't move because a servo is burnt out, but because Fritz, the child possessing him, doesn't want to move it, has some spiritual block or trauma associated with that limb. And no amount of component replacement will fix this because the problem isn't mechanical. But you're a technician, not an exorcist, not a grief counselor, not a medium. So you replace the servo anyway, document that the repair was successful, and leave Bonnie still unable to move his arm. And the company accepts this, pays you for the repair, schedules another repair call for next week when the problem persists, billing the client for endless repairs of a problem that has no mechanical solution. Your job, you realize eventually, is not to actually fix the animatronics but to provide plausible deniability, to create paper trails suggesting that the machines are being properly maintained, that any malfunctions are being addressed, that the company is taking reasonable precautions, even though reasonable precautions are impossible when dealing with possessed robotic systems. You're being paid to participate in a fiction, to pretend that normal engineering can address supernatural problems, to enable Fazbear Entertainment's liability management through creating documentation that will be used in court to argue they acted responsibly when inevitably someone is killed by these machines. The moral compromise of this role, combined with the physical danger and psychological trauma, makes long-term employment impossible. You would quit or experience complete breakdown within months, unable to continue working on systems that contain dead children, unable to maintain the fiction that you're providing meaningful repair services, unable to live with the knowledge that your technical skills are being exploited to help cover up murders and enable continued operation of lethal animatronics. The fate you'd meet, crushed, trapped, or driven mad. Your tenure as an animatronic technician would end in one of three ways, assuming you didn't quit first. You would be crushed inside an animatronic when it activated during repairs. Your death rapid but agonizing. Mechanical components designed to entertain children instead pulverizing your body. Your final moments spent in darkness and pain as metal closed around you and your co-worker frantically tried to pull you free, failing, listening to your screams diminish to gurgles. Then silence, finding your body broken and impossible to extract without fully dismantling the animatronic. Itself a gruesome task that would traumatize everyone involved. Or you would become trapped, not physically but spiritually, your consciousness absorbed into the animatronic you were repairing, your remnant mixing with the existing remnant from murdered children, your identity fragmenting and merging with the machines until you couldn't remember your life before, couldn't conceive of existence outside the pizzeria, eventually dying there through some accident that was really a suicide, your spirit remaining to join the growing collection of souls trapped in Fazbear Entertainment's endless cycle of death and possession and cover-up. Or you would simply go mad. The remnant exposure and psychological trauma and moral compromise combining to shatter your sanity. Your breakdown, manifesting as paranoid delusions where you believed the animatronics were following you home, were hiding in your closet, were plotting to kill you, your behavior becoming erratic enough that you were terminated for safety concerns, your descent continuing after employment ended, your family watching helplessly as you deteriorated, eventually institutionalized or dead by your own hand. Another casualty of Fazbear Entertainment's operations that the company would deny any responsibility for, claiming pre-existing mental health conditions, providing documentation of erratic behavior that was actually PTSD from industrial trauma, shielding themselves from liability while your life burned out like a faulty circuit. Rest in the knowledge of impossibility. Let this understanding settle gently now, the knowledge that the animatronic technician role, despite seeming more professional than night guard or day shift positions, is equally impossible to survive, equally designed to destroy whoever attempts it, equally hostile to human life and sanity. The machines themselves are hostile. The company that employs you is negligent at best and actively malicious at worst. The remnant saturating everything you touch is toxic to your mind and soul, and the knowledge you gain through this work about murders and cover-ups and impossible engineering would burden you for whatever remains of your life after employment ends. Sleep now. Drift away from repair bays and possessed animatronics and maintenance manuals that read like occult texts, away from the impossible task of fixing what cannot be fixed, of maintaining what should not be maintained, of keeping operational machines that should have been destroyed decades ago when they first became tombs for children. Rest, knowing that your career as a technician in this universe would measure in months at most, days more likely, hours if you were particularly unlucky, or happened to be inside an animatronic when the spirit possessing it decided that no more repairs would be tolerated. The exploration continues. There are more roles, more locations, more reasons why you wouldn't survive. But rest first. Let this knowledge of technical impossibility join with knowledge of night guard mortality and day shift danger in a comprehensive picture of a universe designed to kill anyone foolish or desperate enough to seek employment within it. Sleep gently, safely, far from Freddy Fazbear's pizza and its murdered children, and its possessed animatronics and its corporate negligence, grateful that your understanding comes from distance rather than experience, from learning rather than suffering. More awaits, but rest now. Let sleep take you away from these particular horrors, these specific impossibilities, these detailed explorations of why this world would chew you up and spit you out, and then classify your death as an industrial accident or trespassing incident or unfortunate coincidence, rather than the inevitable result of working for a company that values profit over human life, entertainment over safety, and liability protection over truth. Dream of safer professions, of working with machines that stay off when unpowered, of companies that protect their employees, of worlds where dead children rest in peace rather than in animatronic shells, of any career that doesn't involve sticking your hands into mechanical tombs while possessed systems wait for the right moment to crush you. Dream of anything else, and when you wake, be grateful that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza exists only in fiction, only in games and stories, not in your town, not hiring, not waiting for you to need the work badly enough to ignore the warnings, to sign the waivers, to pick up tools and approach machines that should not exist, should not move, should not contain what they contain. Rest well. The nightmare is documented but not experienced, understood but not lived, and that distance is everything. The difference between knowledge and trauma, between understanding horror and surviving it, between listening safely from your bed and actually spending one shift, 1 hour, 1 moment as a technician in a world designed to ensure that no one truly survives their employment. Part 4. The Corporate Ladder. Management and Ownership. Continuing with increasingly detailed exploration of why you wouldn't survive. As we drift deeper into this comprehensive examination of why the FNAF universe would destroy you, let us climb the corporate ladder away from the physical dangers of night guards, day staff, and technicians into what might seem like a safer position. Management, corporate roles, even ownership of Fazbear Entertainment franchise locations. Surely, you might think, surely those who make decisions rather than implement them, who profit from the restaurants rather than work in them, who occupy offices separate from the animatronics and the remnant and the immediate physical dangers, surely they would survive, would thrive even, in this universe designed to chew up frontline employees. This assumption, like all assumptions about safety in the FNAF universe, proves fatally incorrect as we explore the unique ways that power and knowledge destroy those who wield them. As we understand how complicity in corporate negligence creates its own form of death, slower than spring lock failures, but no less certain. And as we discover that distance from immediate danger provides no protection when the entire system is corrupted from the top down, when knowing the truth about Fazbear Entertainment makes you either a willing monster or a target for silencing. The franchisee nightmare, buying your own doom. You've seen the franchise opportunity advertised, perhaps in a business magazine or online listing. Own your own Freddy Fazbear's Pizza franchise. Proven business model, iconic brand recognition, comprehensive support from corporate headquarters. Initial franchise fee competitive, ongoing royalties reasonable. Join America's favorite family entertainment chain. The pitch is appealing. The brand is recognizable. Children love the animatronic characters, and despite persistent rumors about accidents and incidents, the restaurants continue operating. Locations continue opening, suggesting profitability despite problems. You have capital to invest, either saved over years or borrowed against your home, and you're ready to be your own boss, to build something for your family, to take calculated risks for potentially significant rewards. The franchise disclosure document you receive is hundreds of pages, dense legal language, financial projections, required operational procedures, and buried deep in section after section, carefully worded warnings about historical incidents and ongoing litigation, and recommended insurance coverage significantly above industry standard. These red flags, designed to satisfy legal disclosure requirements while not actually alarming potential franchisees, should give you pause. But the corporate representative explains them away. Every restaurant chain has some incidents. It's just the nature of the business. The important thing is that we have comprehensive legal support to protect franchisees and insurance to cover any unlikely situations. You sign the franchise agreement, pay the initial fee, secure your location, and begin the process of opening your Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, not yet understanding that you've just bought a death trap, that you're now personally liable for everything that happens in your establishment, that the comprehensive legal support exists primarily to protect corporate headquarters from liability while leaving you, the franchisee, exposed to every lawsuit, every criminal investigation, every consequence of operating a business where animatronics hunt employees and children die in accidents that are not really accidents. The burden of knowledge. Learning what you've bought into your education begins during training at an existing Freddy Fazbear's location, where you shadow experienced franchisees and learn operational procedures, where you're taught how to manage inventory, how to handle birthday party bookings, how to maintain animatronics within budget constraints, and where, late one evening after the training session has officially ended, a manager takes you aside and explains the reality of what you've purchased. The animatronics are haunted, they tell you flatly, without preamble or softening. They contain the bodies of children murdered in the 1980s by a man named William Afton, who was a co-founder of the company. Corporate knows this, has always known this, and the entire business model is built around managing this reality while maintaining public ignorance. Your job as a franchisee is to operate profitably while minimizing incidents, to protect corporate's interests while accepting personal liability for anything that goes wrong, and to understand that you're now complicit in a cover-up that has lasted decades. This information hits you like physical force, the understanding that you've invested your life savings into a business built on murdered children, that the animatronics entertaining guests in your soon-to-open location contain decomposed bodies, that you've signed contracts making you personally responsible for any deaths or injuries that occur, that you cannot back out now without losing everything, that you're trapped by financial commitment into becoming part of a conspiracy you never imagined existed. You want to walk away, to break the franchise agreement and accept the financial loss rather than operating a murder scene disguised as family restaurant. But the agreements you signed include liquidated damages, clauses that would bankrupt you, would take your home, your savings, would destroy you financially even beyond the initial investment. You're locked in, forced to proceed with opening your location or face a financial ruin, and so you make the same choice countless franchisees before you have made. You rationalize, you minimize, you tell yourself that proper management can prevent incidents, that if you're careful and diligent and lucky, you can operate without anyone dying can profit from this cursed business without becoming personally responsible for tragedy. This rationalization corrodes you spiritually before your location even opens. The knowledge that you're choosing profit over morality, that you're accepting complicity in ongoing cover-up and negligence because walking away would cost too much, that you've been manipulated into a position where doing the right thing is financially impossible, where the only viable path forward is to become part of the system that destroys employees and customers with equal indifference. The operational nightmare, managing death and liability. Your location opens, and you discover that managing a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is not normal restaurant management, but crisis management disguised as daily operations. A constant juggling of incidents, near misses, employee complaints, customer concerns, and desperate attempts to maintain the illusion that everything is fine, while knowing that catastrophe could strike at any moment. The animatronics malfunction constantly, freezing mid-performance or moving when they shouldn't. Their haunted nature manifesting in ways that terrify employees and disturb customers. You spend hours on the phone with technicians, filing service requests with corporate, trying to get repairs that never fully solve problems because the problems are supernatural rather than mechanical. Corporate's response is always the same. Keep the animatronics running, minimize downtime. Profits depend on the characters performing, and if employees or customers complain about unusual behavior, provide free meal vouchers and have them sign incident waivers disguised as feedback forms. Employees quit constantly, your turnover rate approaching 100 every few months, meaning you're perpetually understaffed, perpetually training new hires who will themselves quit within weeks, creating a cycle where no one ever develops experience or competence, where institutional knowledge never accumulates, where every shift runs with confused employees making dangerous mistakes because they simply don't know better yet. You cannot offer higher wages to retain staff because franchise royalties and operational costs consume most revenue. Cannot improve working conditions because corporate mandates keeping costs below strict thresholds. Cannot solve the fundamental problem that working at your location is dangerous and traumatic, and employees correctly recognize that their safety is not your priority. Night guards are the worst problem because they discover the animatronics hunt them, because they experience genuine terror, because they sometimes die and you're the one who has to handle it. You arrive in the morning to find your night guard didn't survive the shift. Their body discovered by day staff, stuffed into a suit or found in the office with signs of fatal heart attack brought on by extreme stress, and you must call corporate, who sends lawyers rather than condolences, who instruct you on evidence preservation, who coach you on what to tell police, who remind you that your franchise agreement makes you liable for employee deaths while shielding corporate from direct responsibility. You find yourself lying to investigators, following scripts provided by corporate attorneys, describing the night guard as a trespasser who wasn't properly scheduled to work, suggesting possible drug use or pre-existing health conditions, doing anything to shift blame away from the animatronics, away from the operational procedures, away from the fundamental reality that your business kills people and everyone involved knows it but admits nothing. This destroys you morally, makes you complicit not just in cover-up, but in active deception, transforms you from someone trying to run a business into someone obstructing justice, helping murderers hide bodies, protecting a corporation that values profit over human life. The financial death spiral. Profits that never come beyond moral and legal consequences. There's the brutal financial reality that Freddy Fazbear's pizza franchises are not actually profitable for franchisees, despite corporate's rosy projections. The combination of high operational costs, constant repairs, employee turnover, insurance premiums reflecting the location's true risk profile, legal settlements from incidents, and franchise fees extracting margin means that you're working 70 hours per week, managing a business that destroys your soul, accepting personal liability for deaths and injuries, and barely breaking even financially if you're lucky, more likely operating at a loss that slowly depletes your initial investment and forces you deeper into debt. The franchise agreement locks you into purchasing supplies, animatronics, and services exclusively from corporate-approved vendors at inflated prices, prevents you from making operational changes that might improve profitability, requires you to maintain standards that are expensive to implement, and extracts royalties based on gross revenue rather than profit, meaning that even when you're losing money, corporate is taking their cut, profiting from your loss, bleeding you financially while you bear all operational risk and liability. You watch your savings disappear, your debt increase, your home's equity evaporate as you secure additional loans to keep the location operating, trapped by sunk costs, telling yourself that next month will be better, that if you can just survive until the next birthday party season, until the next summer when families need entertainment options, you'll turn the corner. But next month is always worse than the last. The debt growing, the stress increasing, your marriage failing under the strain, your health deteriorating from overwork and constant crisis management. Eventually, inevitably, you cannot continue. You default on the franchise agreement, unable to make royalty payments, unable to keep the location staffed and operational, and corporate begins foreclosure proceedings, seizing your location, taking everything you invested plus penalties for early termination, leaving you bankrupt, broken, psychologically damaged from years of managing a death trap, morally compromised from years of covering up incidents and lying to authorities, with nothing to show for the experience except debt and trauma, and the knowledge that you participated in a system that killed people, that you were used by Fazbear Entertainment as a liability shield, a sacrificial layer between corporate and legal consequences, a person whose financial destruction was budgeted and expected from the beginning. The corporate position, complicity from comfort. Perhaps you think avoiding franchisee status and working directly for corporate headquarters would be safer, that a position in Fazbear Entertainment's main offices would insulate you from the physical dangers and direct liability of operating a location. That being part of the management structure, rather than a frontline owner, would allow you to profit from the business model without suffering its consequences. This proves partially true in that you're physically safer, not personally handling animatronics or working in haunted locations, but utterly false in that you're more morally culpable, more directly responsible for the system that kills people, more aware of the full scope of negligence and cover-up because you're helping to coordinate it, and more trapped by knowledge that makes you either an active participant in ongoing crimes or a potential witness who must be kept silent through any means necessary. Working in corporate risk management, you review incident reports daily, tracking injuries and deaths across locations, seeing patterns that would horrify regulators if they were ever disclosed, recommending settlements that are always contingent on NDAs, coordinating with legal teams to minimize exposure, managing insurance relationships with carriers who charge exorbitant premiums because they understand the true risk profile. You know the body count, know which locations are most dangerous, know which animatronics have killed most frequently, and you know that corporate's response is never to fix the problems, but to manage them, to keep the information compartmentalized, to ensure that no single authority or media outlet ever sees the complete picture of just how many people have died in connection with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. In corporate legal, You draft the NDAs that silence victims' families, the arbitration clauses that prevent lawsuits from reaching public courts, the franchise agreements that shift liability to owners, the employment contracts that classify workers as independent contractors to avoid benefits and workers' compensation obligations. You're not just aware of the system's evil, but actively building it, creating the legal architecture that allows murder and negligence to continue. And you tell yourself that you're just doing your job, that if you didn't do this, someone else would, that you're not personally responsible for deaths that occur in locations you never visit. But these rationalizations fail increasingly often, as the weight of what you're enabling crushes your conscience. In corporate communications, you craft press releases minimizing incidents, coordinate with local media to downplay negative stories, manage social media to suppress discussion of accidents, develop marketing campaigns that emphasize fun and family, while carefully avoiding any acknowledgement of the company's dark history. You're literally building the lies that let the company continue operating, and you're good at it, talented at spin, effective at damage control, and every successful campaign that preserves the brand's reputation. Despite another child's death makes you complicit in the next death, because if you weren't so good at covering it up, the company would be forced to close, forced to stop, forced to end the cycle of tragedy you're helping to perpetuate. The impossible exit, trapped by knowledge. You eventually reach a breaking point, as everyone in corporate eventually does, where you cannot continue participating in a system that kills people, where the weight of complicity becomes unbearable, where you decide to quit, to walk away, to find employment somewhere less stained by death and deception. But exiting Fazbear Entertainment Corporate is not as simple as submitting resignation, because you know too much, have seen too many documents, understand too completely how the company operates, and the NDAs you signed when hired are comprehensive, enforceable, and backed by legal teams who have successfully silenced far more dangerous witnesses than you. You're permitted to leave, technically, but with conditions. You must sign enhanced NDAs covering everything you learned during employment. Must agree to never work in entertainment or regulatory fields, where you might have incentive to disclose information. Must accept monitoring of your communications and associations to ensure compliance, and must understand that violation of these agreements will result not just in lawsuits for damages, but in criminal charges for theft of trade secrets, corporate espionage, whatever creative legal theories the company's attorneys can develop to ensure your financial destruction and possible imprisonment. Some former corporate employees, driven by conscience, try to become whistleblowers, try to expose what they know to journalists, regulators, or law enforcement. These attempts rarely succeed, because Fazbear Entertainment has connections in every relevant agency, because evidence is compartmentalized and individually non-damning without context that only insiders possess, because whistleblowers can be discredited through planted evidence or manufactured scandals, or simply through character assassination that makes them appear unstable, vengeful, or mendacious. And some whistleblowers simply disappear. Their disappearances ruled as voluntary, as people running from debt or failed relationships, as having no connection to their former employer, though everyone who knew them understands otherwise, understands that Fazbear Entertainment protects its secrets with whatever means necessary. That knowledge of the company's operations makes you valuable while employed, and a liability after you leave. That the safest position is to remain employed, to accept your role in the machine, to stop fighting what you cannot change and simply collect your paycheck while helping the monster feed. The Owner's Curse, Henry, Emily, and Legacy of Guilt. The ultimate cautionary tale of corporate involvement with Freddy Fazbear's is Henry Emily himself, the co-founder who created the animatronics with genuine love and artistic vision, who wanted only to bring joy to children, including his own daughter, and who discovered too late that his partner William Afton was using their creation as tools for murder, that his animatronics contained dead children, that everything he built was corrupted beyond salvation. Henry's arc, documented throughout FNAF lore, is one of complete destruction through moral responsibility and inability to fix what he helped create. He lost his daughter Charlotte to William's murders, discovering her death too late to save her, but soon enough to understand his partnership made it possible, that his animatronic designs made perfect hiding places for bodies, that his business provided William with access to victims and infrastructure for concealing crimes. This knowledge destroyed Henry, sent him into depression and isolation, drove him to spend years attempting to undo the damage, to free the trapped spirits, to end Fazbear Entertainment's operations, culminating in his final plan to burn everything, animatronics and himself included, in a fire hot enough to destroy Remnant and finally give peace to the murdered children. Henry's sacrifice, documented in his final recorded message, is the statement of a man completely broken by guilt, who takes responsibility not just for his actions but for his inaction, for not seeing William's nature sooner, for not protecting the children who died in his establishments, for every consequence that flowed from his decision to create Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, his decision to die in the fire he sets, to end his own life while ending the curse he helped create, represents the only exit he saw available. Complete destruction of himself, his legacy, and everything connected to the nightmare his dream became. This is the end point of corporate involvement at the highest level, the inevitable destination of anyone who fully understands what Fazbear Entertainment is and does, who bears real responsibility for its existence and continuation. You cannot reform it from within, cannot fix systemic evil through policy changes or safety improvements, cannot salvage something built on murdered children and sustained through decades of negligence and cover-up. The only moral response is destruction, burning it all down, and Henry's example suggests that such destruction requires self-sacrifice, requires the reformer to die with the monster they are killing, because the complicity runs too deep, the stain too permanent, the guilt too comprehensive to survive the cleansing. Your fate in corporate roles destroyed. Slowly, your time in Fazbear Entertainment, corporate, or franchise ownership would end not in the immediate violent death of night guards or technicians, but in slow destruction of everything that made you human. Gradual erosion of ethics until you can rationalize any action. Steady accumulation of guilt until you cannot sleep, cannot enjoy anything, cannot exist without the weight of what you've done, and enabled pressing down on every moment. You would drink to forget, develop addictions to numb the moral injury. Destroy relationships through the paranoia and secrecy your position requires. Harm everyone around you while telling yourself you're doing it to protect them, to provide for them, when really you're just protecting the company and yourself from consequences you richly deserve. Eventually, you would quit or be forced out, taking your knowledge and guilt with you, bound by NDAs and the implicit threat of what happens to those who speak too openly, spending whatever remains of your life trying to atone, trying to warn others away from Fazbear entertainment, trying to live with the knowledge that you were part of something monstrous and profited from it, that your comfortable corporate salary came from revenue generated by locations that killed people, that every dollar in your retirement account is stained with the blood of employees and customers who died while you were managing risk or drafting liability waivers or crafting press releases that minimized their deaths. This is not dramatic death, but spiritual death, the kind that leaves you breathing and walking but fundamentally broken, unable to reclaim innocence or integrity, unable to believe you deserve happiness or peace, unable to escape what you know and what you did, carrying it like a curse until your actual death finally releases you. And perhaps not even then. Perhaps your guilt and complicity create their own remnant, your consciousness trapped in the corporate offices like the children are trapped in the animatronics, forced to relive your worst decisions eternally, unable to rest, unable to move on, punished by your own mind more comprehensively than any external justice system ever could. Rest in understanding. No position is safe. Let this section settle over you now, the understanding that the FNAF universe destroys not just those who work directly with animatronics, but anyone who becomes involved with Fazbear entertainment at any level. That corporate positions offer no real safety. That management and ownership face unique horrors tailored to their level of knowledge and responsibility. That the higher you climb in this organization, the more comprehensively it corrupts you, the more completely it owns you, the more certainly it will destroy whatever remains of your humanity by the time you finally escape or die trying. Sleep, knowing you're far from these positions, far from the moral compromises and legal nightmares and slow spiritual death of Fazbear entertainment corporate involvement. Grateful that you will never face the choice between financial security and moral integrity, between career advancement and complicity in cover-ups, between professional success and the knowledge that your success is built on dead children, and a system designed to produce more of them while shielding those responsible from consequences. Dream of ethical employers, of businesses that value human life over profit, of careers that don't require you to sacrifice your soul for your salary, of any path that doesn't lead inevitably to either willing participation in evil or financial and legal destruction when you try to resist. Dream peacefully, knowing that corporate nightmares, while different from physical dangers, are equally lethal to what matters about being human, equally destructive of peace and self-respect, equally designed to ensure that no one truly survives involvement with Fazbear entertainment, regardless of their position or pay grade or distance from the animatronics that actually kill people. The exploration continues. There are more layers to examine, more reasons to document. But rest first. Let the weight of corporate complicity join with the physical dangers we've explored. building a comprehensive picture of a universe that has no safe positions, no survivable roles, no way to engage with its central business without being destroyed physically, psychologically, morally, or some combination of all three. Sleep gently, and when you wake, be grateful that your employment decisions will never include Fazbear entertainment, that you'll never face the temptation to profit from a system built on tragedy, that you're listening to this from a safe distance rather than living it from inside the machine that grinds up everyone it touches. Part 5. The Impossible Survival Math. Why statistics guarantee your death. Continuing the exhaustive exploration for sleep. As we drift further into this meditation on why you wouldn't survive in the FNAF universe, let us now approach the question from a purely mathematical perspective, setting aside specific roles and locations to examine the raw probability, the statistical certainty that, regardless of where you work, what you do, or how careful you are, death in this universe is not a possibility to be avoided, but a certainty to be delayed temporarily at best. This section will wash over you like a gentle tide of inevitable numbers, carrying you deeper into sleep while understanding crystallizes. Survival is a mathematical impossibility when facing systems designed to kill, when probability compounds across multiple simultaneous threats, when every shift adds to cumulative risk that eventually reaches certainty. The baseline threat, mortality per shift. Let's establish baseline probabilities for various FNAF positions, estimating death or serious injury risk per shift based on documented lore, gameplay mechanics translated to reality, and reasonable assumptions about what these situations would actually entail. These numbers are necessarily speculative, but conservative, likely underestimating true risk. Night Guard, any location, 15-30 mortality risk per shift, 5 animatronics hunting you for 6 hours, limited resources, power, doors, time, impossible attention demands, supernatural unpredictability, day staff, any location, 2 to 5, serious injury risk per shift, proximity to animatronics during performances, springlock suit exposure, workplace accidents in understaffed environment, remnant exposure effects, animatronic technician, 10-20 mortality risk per repair call, direct physical contact with haunted systems, work inside animatronics that can activate remnant exposure, concentrated mechanical failure possibilities, corporate franchise management, 0.1-0.5 direct mortality risk per day, 90 moral legal destruction risk over career, no immediate physical danger, comprehensive spiritual psychological damage, legal liability exposure, knowledge-based threats from company. Now, let's examine what these percentages mean when compounded across required employment duration. Even a low 2 risk per shift becomes catastrophic when you must work hundreds of shifts. The inescapable math of repeated exposure. To earn even minimum survival in the FNAF universe, you need to work multiple shifts per week for weeks or months, accumulating shifts until the probability of survival approaches 0. Let's calculate. Night Guard position, assuming 5 mortality risk per night, extremely conservative. Week 1, 5 shifts, 95, 5, 7 survival probability. Week 2, 10 total, 77, 95, 5, 60 survival month, 1 and 20 shifts, 36 survival probability. 3 months, 60 shifts, 4.6 survival probability. 6 months, 120 shifts, 0.2 survival probability. This means that if $1,000 people started as night guards at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, only 2 would survive 6 months, and those 2 would be statistical flukes, not skilled survivors. The job doesn't reward competence. It eliminates everyone through probability. Even at 1 mortality risk per shift, a rate that would be considered catastrophically dangerous in any real profession. 1 month, 20 shifts, 82 survival, 6 months, 120 shifts, 30 survival. 1 year, 240 shifts, 9 survival. No one survives a year as night guard. No one. The mathematics make long-term survival impossible regardless of skill, preparation, or luck. Because luck depletes. Because perfect play is impossible to maintain indefinitely. Because eventually fatigue or equipment failure or simple random chance will create the conditions that kill you. And once those conditions exist, even briefly, you're dead. Cumulative risk. Multiple threat vectors. The above calculations assume a single threat vector, but FNAF positions involve multiple simultaneous risks that compound rather than simply adding: night guard faces, animatronic attacks, 15-20 base risk, power management failure leading to darkness, additional 5 to 10 risk, equipment malfunction, 2 to 3 risk, psychological breakdown affecting performance, 3 or 5 risk, supernatural events like Golden Freddy, 1 or 2 risk. These don't add linearly but compound because each can trigger others. Power failure increases animatronic risk. Psychological breakdown causes mistakes that increase all risks. Equipment malfunction can cause power failure, etc. The total per-shift mortality risk is thus not 25, but closer to 40 to 50, compound, making the survival calculations even more dire. 40 mortality per shift. Week 1, 7.8 survival. 2 weeks, 0.6 survival probability. At 40 mortality per shift, almost no one survives at 2 weeks. At 50 mortality per shift, half of all night guards die their first night, and essentially everyone dies within the first week. The survivor bias fallacy game protagonists who survive 5 or 7 nights might suggest survival is possible, but this represents selection bias. We play as the statistical anomalies, the flukes who happened to survive, not the hundreds of guards who died before them or after them. For every Mike Schmidt or Jeremy Fitzgerald who survived a week, dozens of unnamed temp agency workers died within nights or days. Their stories untold because dead people don't have perspectives to share. Moreover, game protagonists survive because they're player-controlled, because you can restart when they die, because they benefit from your meta-knowledge of patterns and strategies. A real person in that situation has no restarts, no pattern knowledge, no ability to learn from death, just one shot at each shift, each decision final, each mistake lethal, and the probability of making 0 mistakes across 5 consecutive 6-hour shifts under extreme stress approaches 0. Even the in-universe survivors don't truly survive. Michael Afton becomes an undead skin suit. Other guards are implied to die or suffer severe psychological trauma, and survival often means didn't die immediately, rather than escaped unharmed. The best-case scenario is escaping physically intact, but psychologically destroyed, and even that represents a statistical miracle. The degradation curve. Performance over time. Human performance in high-stress situations follows a predictable degradation curve. Hours 0, 2, peak performance, adrenaline-fueled focus. Hours 2 to 4, performance decline begins, attention lapses increase. Hours 4 to 6, a significant impairment, mistakes frequent hours. 6, severe impairment approaching functional incapacity. Night guards must maintain peak performance for hours 0 to 6 continuously. But human physiology makes this impossible. Your performance is optimal only for the first third of your shift, adequate for the second third, and dangerously impaired for the final third, precisely when you're most likely to run out of power, when animatronics are closest, when margin for error is smallest. This creates a mathematical lock. You must perform perfectly when you are physiologically least capable of doing so, and you must do this repeatedly across multiple shifts while cumulative sleep deprivation degrades your baseline performance level. By night 5, your hour 0 performance is worse than your hour 6 performance was on night 1, meaning you start impaired and decline from there, making survival even less likely than probability calculations suggest. The compound error cascade. In systems with multiple failure points, errors cascade and compound. One small mistake creates conditions for larger mistakes, which create conditions for catastrophic failures. In FNAF night guard scenarios, small mistake, forgot to check Pirate Cove. Foxy activates consequence, closing door to stop Foxy. Power drains faster. Consequence, low power, must reduce camera checking. Consequence, reduced monitoring. Miss Bonnie approaching consequence. Bonnie at door. Must close door, more power drain, consequence. Power depleted. All doors open, defenseless, final consequence. Death. This cascade can be triggered by any mistake at any point, and the longer your shift, the more likely such mistakes become. By hour 5, your error rate is high enough that triggering these cascades becomes probable, and once triggered, they almost always terminate in death because the system has no recovery mechanisms, no way to undo mistakes, no reserve resources to compensate for suboptimal play. The environmental hazard multiplication. Each FNAF location has unique hazards that multiply base risks. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, FNAF 1, 4 active animatronics, base threat. Foxy sprint mechanic, instant kill if missed. Golden Freddy hallucination, kills through supernatural means. Freddy's music box attack, unavoidable at 0 power. Each additional mechanic multiplies risk rather than adding linearly. Golden Freddy alone, with estimated 2 appearance rate and 50 kill rate if appeared, adds 1 mortality risk per shift. Across 100 shifts, this minor threat becomes a 63 chance of at least 1 lethal Golden Freddy encounter. Sister location adds spring lock suit sequences, high mortality per exposure, elevator malfunctions, controlled shocks affecting health, exotic animatronic mechanics, Ballora Funtime Foxy. Each added location and mechanic increases the base mortality calculation, making later games' scenarios even less survivable than earlier ones. The difficulty increasing not just for gameplay balance, but reflecting the in-universe reality that Fazbear entertainment locations become progressively more dangerous as remnant accumulates, as more deaths occur, as the supernatural elements strengthen. The psychological toll, unmeasured but lethal. The mathematical models above focus on physical death but ignore psychological breakdown, which is itself lethal through multiple pathways. Breakdown during shift leads to mistakes, leads to death, indirect. Breakdown leads to suicide, direct. Breakdown leads to inability to work, leads to poverty. Homelessness leads to death, slow. Breakdown leads to substance abuse, leads to death, medium term. Estimated psychological mortality over time. Month 1, 10, psychological breakdown rate. Month 3, 35 cumulative month. 6, 60 cumulative year. 1, 85 cumulative. This creates a dual-track survival calculation. Physical survival and psychological survival, both necessary, both degrading over time, both approaching 0, meaning that even if you somehow avoid physical death, improbable, You almost certainly suffer psychological death, near certain, and psychological death leads to physical death through secondary mechanisms on a delayed timeline. The resource depletion. Luck is finite luck. In survival scenarios is not supernatural favor, but the exhaustion of improbable but possible favorable outcomes before improbable but possible catastrophic outcomes occur. Each shift consumes luck, depletes your reservoir of favorable coincidences, brings closer the inevitable shift where every coin flip lands unfavorably, where every split-second decision happens to be wrong, where the chaotic system of animatronic behavior happens to align in ways that make your death unavoidable. Modeling luck as a depletable resource. Start with 100 luck points. Each favorable outcome, animatronic moves away, power lasts until 6 a.m., you make correct split-second decision, costs 5 luck points, each shift requires 20-40 favorable outcomes. Luck replenishes slowly, 5 and 10 points per day of rest, thus shift 100 points, use 30 and at 70. Rest, replenish 7, start shift 2 at 77. Shift 2, use 35 and at 42. Rest, replenish 7, start shift 3 at 49. Shift 3, use 38 and at 11. Shift 4, need 30, only have 11, insufficient luck, death probable. This metaphor illustrates why consecutive shifts are more dangerous than isolated shifts. You're draining a resource that doesn't fully replenish, operating on depleting reserves, approaching a point where you simply don't have enough favorable outcomes remaining to survive the shift's requirements. The certainty horizon. When death becomes inevitable. Given all the above factors, per shift mortality risk, performance degradation, error cascades, environmental hazards, psychological toll, and luck depletion, we can calculate a certainty horizon, the point at which continued employment guarantees death. Night guard, 2 4 weeks, 10-20 shifts. Day staff, 3 to 6 months, 200-400 shifts. Technician, 2 to 10 to 3 months, 20-30 repair calls. Corporate, 2 to 5 years. Psychological death, 10 to 20 years. Physical death via stress-related illness. These horizons represent the point where survival probability drops below ones, where continued employment is statistically equivalent to suicide, where you're not risking death but merely delaying it slightly, where the question is not, will I die, but when will I die, and how much will I suffer first? No one can survive beyond these horizons through skill or preparation or caution. The mathematics guarantee elimination. The only winning move is not to play, to never accept employment, to recognize that any position in this universe leads inevitably to death or destruction, and that the only rational response is complete refusal to participate. Drift into statistical inevitability. Let these numbers wash over you now. Let the cold certainty of mathematics carry you toward sleep, understanding that the FNAF universe is designed, whether intentionally or through emergent properties, to eliminate human life. That survival is not difficult but impossible. That every apparent survivor is a temporary anomaly destined to join the statistics eventually. That you would not last a day, not because you're weak or unprepared, but because the system is designed to ensure no one lasts, no one survives, no one escapes except through death. Sleep in the comfort that these are numbers, abstract calculations, not your lived experience, not your mortality being calculated and found wanting, not your life being reduced to percentages and probability curves. Rest knowing that mathematical certainty in fiction remains fictional, that understanding these impossibilities requires no risk, involves no exposure, threatens nothing but perhaps your ability to ever view FNAF scenarios as survivable, or these positions as anything other than elaborate execution methods delayed slightly to extract labor before the inevitable conclusion. Dream of survivable odds, of risks that don't compound toward certainty, of employment that doesn't calculate your death as a budget line item and your survival as a statistical anomaly, of worlds where working 5 nights doesn't carry a 95 mortality rate, where staying employed for a month doesn't mark you for death with mathematical precision, where the question, will I survive this job, has answers other than no, but you might last longer than some before you die like everyone else eventually does. The mathematics are clear, the statistics certain, the conclusion inescapable. You wouldn't last a day in FNAF, because the universe's fundamental structure ensures you won't. Because survival is not the expected outcome, but the least probable one. Because every factor compounds toward death and none compound toward life. Because the math is rigged and the house always wins. And the house in this case is a pizza restaurant that kills everyone who works there, given sufficient time, which is measured in weeks at most, days more likely, hours if you're particularly unlucky. But honestly, luck doesn't matter much when the base probability is already overwhelming death. Rest now in numbers, in statistics, in the cold comfort of understanding exactly why survival is impossible, why you wouldn't make it, why no one makes it, not really, not permanently, not in any way that matters. Sleep soundly, safely beyond the reach of these probabilities, these calculations, these mathematical certainties that describe universes you'll never have to inhabit, roles you'll never have to fill, shifts you'll never have to survive, because understanding from distance is enough, is safer, is the only form of engagement with FNAF that doesn't eventually kill you. The numbers have spoken, the probabilities calculated, the certainty established, and the certainty says, no, you would not survive, not even close, not even maybe, just no, flat and final and mathematically proven. Rest in that understanding and be grateful that probability doesn't apply to listeners, only to workers, only to those foolish or desperate enough to accept employment in a universe designed to consume them. Part 6. The Final Understanding. Acceptance of Impossibility. Concluding the exploration with gentle finality. As we arrive at the conclusion of this comprehensive exploration, as sleep pulls you deeper and consciousness fades toward rest, let us gather all the threads we've examined and weave them into final understanding. You would not survive a day in the FNAF universe, not because of any personal failing, but because survival itself is the anomaly, the exception, the statistical impossibility in a system designed through negligence, malice, and supernatural contamination to eliminate human life efficiently while extracting maximum labor and profit before the inevitable conclusion. The synthesis. Every factor compounds. We've examined physical dangers, psychological toll, corporate negligence, supernatural threats, and mathematical certainty. Each factor alone makes survival difficult. Combined, they make it impossible. You cannot defend against animatronics while managing psychological breakdown. You cannot maintain equipment while handling remnant exposure. You cannot optimize performance while operating under corporate policies designed to maximize danger for liability protection. You cannot survive long enough to develop experience because the learning curve is measured in near-death experiences, and the graduation is death itself. Every role in the FNAF universe requires you to accept supernatural threats, No training addresses. Work with equipment designed to fail catastrophically. Operate under procedures that prioritize profit over survival. Maintain performance despite accumulating trauma. Continue showing up, despite knowing the odds. Participate in cover-ups of your own endangerment. Accept that your death is budgeted and expected. This is not employment, but gradual execution. Not a career, but a countdown. Not work, but elaborate suicide where you are paid minimum wage to stand in designated killing zones and act surprised when the killing happens. The mercy of understanding. There is mercy in this understanding, in knowing before experiencing, in learning from distance rather than through trauma. You now understand why. Night guard positions offer impossible wages for impossible workday staff positions, turnover constantly despite being safer. Technicians require danger pay that still doesn't compensate for risk. Corporate positions destroy souls as thoroughly as floor positions destroy bodies. No amount of preparation, skill, or caution can shift probability meaningfully. This knowledge protects you, warns you, ensures that should you ever encounter an opportunity to work at anything resembling Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, you will recognize the danger immediately. Will understand that the job posting is not opportunity, but threat. Will walk away rather than walk into the grinding machinery that has consumed everyone before you and would consume you just as efficiently. The blessing of fiction. As sleep takes you now, rest in the profound blessing that FNAF is fiction, that these deaths are narrative, not actual, that the universe we've explored exists only in games and stories and not in reality, that you will never actually face the choice between minimum wage and mortal danger, between employment and death, between participating in cover-ups or starving, because no real company operates like Fazbear Entertainment. No real restaurants have possessed animatronics. No real career paths lead inevitably to death or madness in quite these specific ways. The horrors we've explored are metaphorical in some sense, exaggerations that make visible the real but less dramatic ways that employment can destroy people, that corporations can prioritize profit over safety, that knowledge can burden rather than empower, that systems can grind up those within them while maintaining plausible deniability. FNAF takes these real dynamics and amplifies them to supernatural extremes, making visible through horror what is hidden through banality and reality, teaching through impossible examples lessons that apply to possible situations. But still, the blessing stands. This is fiction. This is story. This is exploration without risk, understanding without experience, wisdom without the cost of survival. You've learned why you wouldn't survive without having to actually face the test, and that gap between knowledge and experience is everything, is life itself, is the difference between understanding death and experiencing it. The permission to rest. You have permission now to let this exploration end, to release the details we've examined, to allow specifics to fade into general understanding. The FNAF universe is comprehensively lethal. No position is safe. Survival is statistically impossible, and you would not last a day not through weakness, but through the fundamental design of a universe hostile to human life at every level. Sleep now, listener, deep and dreamless, or filled with dreams that are not nightmares, that carry none of the specific horrors we've documented, that allow your mind to rest from the weight of understanding. Just how many ways this universe could kill you. would kill you, does kill everyone who enters it with only the rarest exceptions, who themselves rarely survive unscathed. You've made this journey with me, through night guard offices and daytime dining rooms, through repair bays and corporate headquarters, through mathematical certainty and psychological breakdown, through every role and every reason that survival is impossible. And now the journey ends, the exploration concludes, the understanding is complete. The final gift, gratitude for distance. Be grateful, profoundly grateful, that you are here and not there, that you listen rather than experience, that you understand these dangers as abstractions rather than face them as realities. Be grateful for fiction that allows horror without harm, for stories that teach without trauma, for games that let us explore death without dying, for the fundamental blessing of distance that lets you understand the FNAF universe without being destroyed by it. Be grateful that when this ends, when you wake, you will wake somewhere safe, somewhere without animatronics or remnant or corporate negligence or any of the 1,000 threats we've documented. Be grateful that your employment decisions will never include Freddy Fazbear's pizza, that your career path will never require you to calculate whether you can survive even one shift in conditions designed to ensure you don't, that your life will proceed without the shadow of possessed machines or malicious employers or supernatural contamination. Be grateful and rest, and know that this understanding, comprehensive, detailed, exhaustive, requires nothing more from you, asks nothing, demands nothing, threatens nothing. You've learned what needed learning, understood what needed understanding, and now you can simply rest. Sleep now, forever safe from FNAF. As this exploration concludes, as your eyes grow heavy and consciousness fades, let all the details we've examined dissolve like morning mist, leaving only the essential truth. You would not survive, but you don't have to, because the FNAF universe exists in story, not reality, threatens characters, not listeners, destroys digital avatars, not actual people, and the gulf between fiction and reality is your absolute protection, your unbreachable safety, your guarantee that understanding these horrors costs nothing more than time and attention. Sleep deeply, listener. Sleep well. Sleep safely, far from pizzerias and animatronics and springlock suits and corporate negligence and mathematical certainty of death. Sleep in your own bed, in your own world, where robots stay powered off when unpowered, where companies face real consequences for killing employees, where survival of a work shift is expected rather than miraculous, where you wake tomorrow not to another shift at Freddy Fazbear's, but to whatever your actual life contains, mundane perhaps but survivable, ordinary perhaps but not lethal, your life rather than a countdown, your future rather than a probability curve converging on zero. Sleep now. Rest completely. Dream of anything else, anywhere else, any universe but FNAF, any role but those we've explored, any life but one measured in shifts survived before the inevitable conclusion. Dream peacefully, knowing that this nightmare is documented but not experienced, understood but not lived, explored but not endured. You wouldn't last a day in FNAF, but you don't have to. You're here, safe, listening, learning, resting, far beyond the reach of any of the 1,000 ways that universe could kill you. Rest in that safety. Rest in that distance. Rest in that blessing. Good night, listener. Sleep well, and may you never, ever, not even in your worst nightmares, actually have to test whether you'd survive even 1 hour in the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, because the answer is no. The answer has always been no, and understanding that answer from the safety of your bed is infinitely preferable to learning it firsthand in a place designed to ensure that no one survives, no one escapes, no one lasts a day except through miraculous luck that doesn't really exist and wouldn't save you anyway. Not permanently. Not really. Not in any way that matters when the next shift starts and the animatronics begin moving. And you realize that surviving yesterday means nothing when today is already trying to kill you. Just as efficiently as yesterday did. Just as tomorrow will if you're unfortunate enough to survive today. Rest. Sleep. Be safe. Be grateful. Be far, far away from Freddy Fazbear's pizza and everything it represents, everything we've explored, everything that would kill you given the chance, but will never have that chance because you're here, not there, listening, not experiencing, safe beyond the reach of fictional horrors that remain, thankfully, permanently fictional. The exploration is complete. Your understanding is sufficient. Your safety is absolute. Sleep now, deeply and dreamlessly, far from everything we've discussed, protected by the fundamental blessing of fiction. You can understand it without living it, can explore it without surviving it, can know why you wouldn't last a day without having to test that knowledge in reality. Sleep well, listener. You've earned rest from these particular horrors. Close your eyes, drift away, and let the FNAF universe fade back into the fiction where it belongs, troubling nothing, threatening nothing, existing only as a story, only as a cautionary tale, only as an exploration of why some places, some jobs, some universes should never be entered, should never be tested, should only be understood from the maximum possible distance. The distance between fiction and reality, between story and life, between understanding death and experiencing it. Good night. Sleep well, and be forever grateful that you'll never have to actually survive even one day in FNAF, because survival is impossible. The universe is designed to kill you, and the only winning move is not to play, which you've won by never starting, by only listening, by remaining here, safe, far away, where no animatronic can reach you, no remnant can touch you, no corporate negligence can endanger you, no mathematical certainty can doom you. You wouldn't survive, but you don't have to, and that makes all the difference. Sleep now. Rest completely. The nightmare is examined, documented, understood, and remains comfortingly, permanently fictional. Dream of anything else, anywhere else, anyone else but William Afton. Anyone else but employees at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Anyone else but the countless victims this universe has claimed and would claim, including you. If you ever gave it the chance it will never have because you're here, safe, listening, learning, resting. The tale is complete. The understanding is sufficient. The rest is deserved. Sleep now, listener, and may your dreams be free of everything we've explored tonight.